All right, let's get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. You are attending Apparo's Nonprofit Bites and Insights. These are a webinar series that are free of cost for nonprofit professionals like yourselves. So today is the final part of our three-part series around marketing strategies for nonprofits. If you were unable to attend last week's or the weeks before, the recordings are available for you to review. I will be dropping those links in the chat in a moment. But today we are going to be doing a deep dive into strategies to help reach your corporate engagement related goals. So we have Bleema Bershad returning to lead this conversation. And we also have Kristen Reed with us, Director of Financial Development, joining in on this conversation. So before I turn it over to them, let's go over these housekeeping details. All our webinars are recorded and are uploaded onto our website as well as our YouTube channel. But for those of you who attend live, you do receive a follow-up email from me. It'll include the direct link to the recording as well as the slide deck and other resources we might talk about today in this conversation. Q&A and chat box are available for you to use. Please drop in your questions in the Q&A box at any time throughout this presentation. Chat box is also available for you to use to make comments. I see someone has introduced themselves, so let's keep that going while I continue on. So if you are new to Apparo, just really quickly, we ourselves are also a nonprofit. We are based in Charlotte, North Carolina, and essentially our mission is to help other nonprofits like yourselves with anything technology. Here's a snapshot of all of our services. You can see we have a wide range of services, and this is to ensure that we're meeting you where you are at in terms of your technology. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but best way to learn more about us is go to our website at apparo.org to learn more. And then if you decide you'd like to access our services or speak to one of our staff members, you can drop in a request form. Another way to stay updated on our programming, subscribe to our email list. You'll also have my contact information. And then finally, if you like what we do, consider writing a short Google review. All right, that is it for me. I'm going to stop sharing and go ahead and turn it over to Bleema.
Great. Thank you, Yanting. Let me get organized to share my screen. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Welcome. As Yanting said, today we're focusing on marketing and corporate engagement. So I thought it would make sense to start by defining what corporate engagement is in the first place, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. And I want to start by saying this is not a company giving you a check and telling you to have a nice day, which in some cases might be great, but it's much more than that, and it's much richer than that. And we often reflect on how much nonprofits have to gain, but I would define corporate engagement as a mutually beneficial corporate nonprofit partnership, truly mutually beneficial. Yes, our corporate partners can really up the financial ante for us beyond the giving of individual donors, but let's not forget they have a lot to gain too. So we'll talk about that here. So what you get. And Kristen, keep me honest here. So the volunteers are often the first foot in the door, a way for you and a local company or a larger corporation to get to know each other. And with the right corporate partner, this can be a step toward a funding relationship. Corporate partnership can really begin here. One volunteer who works for a company that has the potential to do more for you, more volunteers, funding, they can really serve as advocates for you to extend corporate relationships. And funding itself can mean many different things. It can be underwriting of specific programs. It can be unrestricted grants of funds. It can be sponsoring of an event. It can be covering your expenses for a day of service. Oops, sorry, wrong scrolling. Advocacy is using their voice and their influence in the community to help you get the support and attention you need. Social capital is similar. It's helping use their position and their relationships to open new doors and relationships for you. How'd I do, Kristen, summarizing sort of what you could get?
I think that's exactly right. And I love that you really call out the value of a volunteer, especially an engaged volunteer that maybe comes and is partnering with your organization, sharing of their time, spending their weekends giving back to the community or attending your events. A lot of times they have really impactful stories about their experience and are willing to go back to their companies and share and help open up new doors or pathways. And really, they become the ambassadors. They're talking about their personal experience, what the engagement has meant to them, and why they think it aligns to the company. So I think that's a great call out and a perfect way to start the conversation today.
Perfect, perfect. I would say from the marketing perspective, when we think about sort of getting our voice out there, it feels easier to ask for a volunteer than to ask for dollars. But I don't know if that's true from your perspective as well.
I love to see when they're aligned. I think that's a
Yeah.
really great partnership, but you're right. A lot of times that volunteering is the first forte into a company and an opportunity for us then to build a deeper and richer partnership.
Perfect. And in terms of what you give, so also known as stewardship, or those activities that you do to retain a corporate partner that you've begun a relationship with. Some of these things are things that they may require. A grant may require certain metrics, certain reporting, but some of these things are those extra things you're going to do because you realize that it's low-hanging fruit, it's inexpensive for you, and it keeps a relationship very warm and strong. Doing shout outs on social media, sharing stories of impact of their work, giving them opportunities to speak at your events. Press opportunities would mean inviting press to come to your event, or even investing in a paid article if you have the money to do that, placing their logo, potentially giving them naming rights on something that they have funded. So we'll talk a lot more about stewardship and fine-tuning stewardship. And then, the important part to always remember when you're doing corporate outreach is that it is mutually beneficial. It's not, we think about that power position. There really is a lot for companies to gain. Um, their branding, their public image, what we call a halo effect. You are the angel with the halo, the nonprofit doing good in the community. And by being beside you, it's wonderful for their public image, and their employees, the community cares, and their employees care. Time and time again, our survey results tell us when we talk to our volunteers from corporate partners that they value their companies for giving them these opportunities. It drives retention. And companies may have other corporate social responsibility goals that their connection with you is helping them fulfill. Anything? What do you
I
think,
think these
Kristen?
intrinsic things that we're talking about all help just create that connection, and they really inspire the partnership. So you're looking at more than just a transactional relationship. You're really talking about how do we collaborate in a way that's meaningful for our community and beneficial mutually. And so I think this is just a great way to really tee up where those development and marketing strategies go hand in hand and really enhance the partnership.
Yes, I think so. And in any smaller organizations, you may literally be the same person on the marketing and development side, and everything is applicable, whether it's two teams to working together, two people working together, or just one person. So I'll say that when you think about marketing, influencing, attracting, retaining volunteers as individuals, or the constituents you serve as individuals, this is a little bit different because this is business to business marketing. It involves understanding and reacting to corporate level motivation around partnerships with nonprofits, but marketing can help with that. So today we're going to talk about 8 ways that marketing can help you fulfill your corporate engagement goals. This is a similar structure if you've been here the weeks before, but we're really going to talk about corporate engagement here. And you may be doing a lot of these things already and not even realize that this is marketing, but everything follows is marketing. So deepening insights, is where we're going to start. You already know a lot about why companies partner with you and support you. We're going to talk about the importance of learning more and how to go about it. Segmenting corporate partners. Yes, you can apply the same strategies to meet your goals across all your current and potential corporate partners, but segmentation makes your work more focused, strategic, and effective. fine-tuning the engagement experience. This is what we were talking about in our examples on the previous page around stewardship or retention. What are those things you're doing to keep those relationships strong? And what are some tweaks you can make because you deepened your insights and you learned some things that they want? Building a foundation is about making sure that when you're out there marketing, there's someone listening and that you have content. Choosing channels. This is going to be your strategy. What events am I attending? What social media channels am I investing in so that your efforts of time and money are going to pay off? Copywriting is the language you choose to motivate those corporate partner, the gatekeepers, right? This is business to business marketing, but there are humans here who are the gatekeepers to these relationships, and they need to be motivated. Delivering the goods is the stuff that you need, the marketing materials you need when you're out in the physical and digital world, primarily for attracting, but also some for retaining your corporate partners, and then measuring outcomes. If you're investing your time and money, you want to make sure that it's paying off. So let's go ahead and dive into deepening insight. Oh, sorry, I lied. It's so this is all about your goals and your corporate engagement goals. So we're going to start by talking about your goals. So you don't want to waste time going down the wrong path. You want to make sure that your goals are clear and communicated to whomever needs to know them. So these are some examples of what your corporate engagement goals might be. Yours might be different. You might be interested in attracting more corporate partners to serve as volunteers. You might be interested in attracting more corporate partners to be funders. You might not have a problem like attracting them and they'll volunteer once or write you one check, but for some reason, something's going wrong with retention. So maybe you're having some type of a stewardship problem and you have a goal around that. Or maybe you have a lot of great relationships, but they're small and you want more volunteers and you want more funds. So you want to deepen and expand those. So these are some examples of goals. And if, as you set them, try to put numbers around them so that you can measure your impact if you're going to invest time and money in addressing these goals. So with your goals established, let's focus on 8 ways that marketing can help fulfill them. Unless, Kristen, you want to add anything like a goal?
No, I think the
example?
metrics point is really important. On the development side, we talk a lot about stewardship and the real value of stewardship and the metrics around that. You've heard everything from the 7 touches a year. And I think this is, again, where we see that collaboration, that ability to really think about what are those tools that I know we're going to get into in the presentation today that you'd have in your toolbox so that you can be thinking intentionally and strategically about how do I share? What are some things that I can do? What are some innovative ways that I can storytell? And I think that's important to the goals.
Thank you. Thank you for adding that. So now we're ready to jump into deepening insights. So I'm talking about this first because I really believe it's the most important. So when it comes to attracting and retaining corporate partners, a lot of the work you do is probably based on a mix of things you've learned and some assumptions you're making, and it's probably working pretty well. You know a lot. But I do believe that if you can deepen your knowledge of your audience, you can fine-tune your strategy. So the first step here is really to think about who are these humans? Who are the gatekeepers? Who can I talk to? And you can start low-hanging fruit would be your volunteers. And also don't forget that your board members who work for corporate partners that you are thinking about deepening your relationship with. And then there are the folks who are really, they may not be the decision makers, but they certainly can open the door. They can share some insights or potentially open the door to you having conversations with the people in the next 3 bullets who may actually be the decision makers, who are more likely to be the people who say, yes, here's our volunteer team. Yes, here is funding for XYZ. Let's have a real partnership. And then think about, are you focusing, do you want to focus more on volunteer relationships, funding relationships to gain these insights? Do you want to talk to target corporations, new relationships that you've already established, long-term relationships, or even former relationships? I mean, may feel a little yucky to talk to someone who's supported you before, but imagine the insights that you could gain if you did talk to them. So the question here is really, who do you want to talk to? Who are the people that can open the door to new, deeper, ongoing corporate engagement? So next, we're going to do the fun part. and talk about what would be great to know from each of these audiences. So we're going to put together like an insights wish list. And then after you have your insights wish list written, we're going to talk more strategically about how are you actually going to open the door to conversations to some of the people that you don't have relationships with yet.
And Bleema, I think asking the hard questions here, one of the things that we do at Apparo is really utilize our surveys. So after we've completed a volunteer engagement, asking those volunteers some standardized questions and then giving them the opportunity to provide some feedback. I think this is incredibly helpful then in how you communicate to potential funders about your volunteers said this, and I wanted you to hear it. One of the tools that we've done in the past also is to capture a real quick video. You know, we all have the technology in our hands, literally, and you can film a quick video. And I think that's also a great storytelling method. So people are not only seeing their employees in action, but maybe asking them to say, in the moment, tell me what this experience has been like. What have you found valuable? What have you learned from this? How does it make you feel walking away? And those types of things, I think, also really deepen those insights.
Yes, that is great. And sometimes they'll say something that's very camera worthy, and sometimes they'll just say something that you want to write down on a piece of paper, but and polish up a little bit, but that's okay as long as you have their approval. But I agree 100% with that. And even if you're doing your work completely virtually, it works fine. You know, often we're looking for those in-person opportunities to take photos and videos, but okay, but we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but thank you. That was definitely very important. So we're going to talk about an insights wish list, and then we'll talk about actually how to gather those insights. So you'll see as we're talking about an insights wish list, we're thinking about questions we want to ask that are not questions for the sake of questions, but that are going to help fine tune the work that we're doing, those other marketing categories that we're going to go through and talk about, like the language that you're using, like the channels that you use to go find these folks, like stewardship. So some questions you might want to ask target corporate relationships. And again, we're going to talk about how to find these folks. Have they considered engaging with you? If so, why haven't they? Maybe this is just maybe it's a communications issue and they literally haven't heard of you. But now that they have, would they consider engaging with you? Do they engage with other nonprofits, and what drives those relationships? When you hear what they're saying, that's language you can use to reflect back in your marketing materials. And it can also help with fine-tuning their engagement experience with you. And then in terms of channels, what are the different ways they learn about corporate volunteer opportunities? What are the different ways they learn about corporate funding and other engagement opportunities? If you hear it again and again, those are channels you want to be at. Those are professional organizations you want to get in front of. Those are events you want to attend. Those are clubs at which you want to try to speak, or social media groups you want to try to invest your time in. So that's target corporate relationships. Now, if you have already had some success here and have some newly established corporate relationships, and this can be as little as having, it starts with one volunteer. That's corporate engagement has begun. And this is also, there are questions you can ask them that will help you pull out language that you can be using on your website, in your brochures, and so forth. What motivated them to commit to an engagement with your nonprofit? Did they have any reservations? How's it going relative to expectations? And these second two can potentially give you some insight into whether you're having a communications opportunity, I would call it. So if you're hearing reservations, if you're hearing a gap between expectations and reality, perhaps you're not communicating something clearly. And so just be clear about it. In terms of channels, how did they find you? If you're investing again in having a table at a certain event or ads on LinkedIn, you want to be sure that they're finding you there, and pull back if they're not. And then ask them about other ways they learn about corporate engagement opportunities, again, to see if there's new places where you should be out there finding them. In terms of longer term ones, you can ask them any of those questions, but these are people who know you well. And there's deeper questions you can ask them. hear their language around impact, about what's motivating their engagement over time with you. And they're the ones who can really help you in general and specifically to fine tune what you're doing for stewardship, for that give and retention. Is there anything you could do to deepen or expand their engagement with you, whether it's volunteering or funding or a combination of both? Do they have any suggestions for improving their experience with your nonprofit? How do they feel about the frequency and the quality of your communications? How do they feel about the way you honor their support of your nonprofit? So the next one can feel tough, but if you're willing to go back to some of these gatekeepers who are no longer supporting you, imagine the insights that you could gather about why they're no longer supporting with you. And it could be, if it was a big group of volunteers, maybe it's as simple as it was a schedule change, but maybe it's something deeper than that. And maybe their experience with you just wasn't great relative to their expectations. And maybe they have some recommendations. Do you think you could swallow this, Kristen?
This is a hard conversation, but I tell you, there is so much value in these conversations from a learning perspective. We also know that sometimes it's nothing that the organization did wrong. Funding priorities change. Organizations decide that they've been really hyper-focused on one effort and they want to realign, or they've gone through a merger or a transition. And so just getting some clarity and a lot of times some closure in this space is really helpful as well, as you think about partnerships going forward, course corrections that could be made, or maybe it's timing. Sometimes it's a no, and sometimes it's a not now. And so knowing the difference in having these hard conversations helps with that.
Oh, perfect. Yes. The no versus the not now is a very big deal. So you'll have a wish list. These were some examples of questions, but literally you'll have a wish list of things you want to know and types of people that you feel that you want to talk to. And that was the funner, easier part, is putting that wish list together. But chances are you're already collecting somewhere in your organization some of this information, or you already have some processes in place to collect it. So you're probably not, Kristen mentioned surveys, and you hopefully probably are doing some. You're probably not sending surveys to that main corporate contact, that CSR lead, that marketing lead, but you probably are surveying your volunteers and your board. So just reviewing that existing data that you're already collecting, intake forms, satisfaction surveys, any type of engagement tracking you're doing, and also talking to staff who engage with these folks. Who knows what kind of data they're collecting, either anecdotally or maybe in a formal way. Pull that all together, look at the questions you want answered, and see, okay, you know what? I already do have some of these answers. And then you're going to have the questions left over. Those are going to be your knowledge gaps. And those are going to be the list of things you still want to know from certain types of people. That's where you put together your strategy to fill those knowledge gaps, and you move forward to fill them. So I would suggest starting with your best resource. Again, the low-hanging fruit is your volunteers and your board members who are somewhat associated either as just either as actually working for that organization or maybe just engaged in that corporate industry. So first, I would suggest looking at looking at those intake forms, looking at surveys that you're doing for your volunteers and boards, and just thinking about, can I add some new questions here? So if you feel that you have some questions where you want to hear their language, but your surveys are 100% multiple choice, and I'm a big fan of multiple choice questions because you can consolidate and look for trends over time. But open-ended questions, especially if you make them required, force people to put in a few words. And as you hear those words, that can help you with the language that you're choosing to use. And maybe you already have some multiple choice questions and you can just like sneak in a couple more, like, where did you hear about us type of a question. So assessing those, adding questions where you can, optimizing your surveys, and then looking at your touch points. And maybe there are times where you're already getting together, meetings, events. these are opportunities to gather qualitative and quantitative data. It doesn't always have to be so formal. Hallway conversations, knowing you have a certain question that you really need to ask like 10 people this month, and remembering it to ask it in a hallway, at a meeting, at an event, or doing for quantitative can also be simple. It can be like a 3-question survey that you have a QR code and you have it up somewhere where you're getting traffic and you're encouraging folks to do it, leveraging the touch points you already have. So hopefully that can help expand some of your some of the knowledge that you have by leveraging those existing touch points. Then it's going to be a question of, how am I going to reach those target corporations that I really don't have a relationship with? And I'll share some thoughts here. Kristen, if you have additional ideas for how you do this, please do share those. Again, the low-hanging fruit is asking your board and your volunteers, working your LinkedIn, look for those second connections, and ask your first connections. Do you really know this person? Do you think you could open a door for me? Sometimes, oh, that says calling. Sorry, that should say cold calling. I will correct it before we send it. Cold calling or cold emailing some of those folks if you can't get a warm introduction, and attending the right events and trying to meet the right people so that you can connect with those corporations you're targeting. Any other strategies, Kristen? You would
Add being an intentional listener in this space is really important. So I distinctly recall a partner meeting that we had with one of our key stakeholders at Apparo. And we had prepped for this meeting. We had prepared all of the snapshots and a robust tool of marketing collateral that we were taking in. It was a great meeting. We were talking about all the wins and asking for feedback. And it was in the walk from the conference room where we had met to the lobby, in a very 2 or 3 brief minute conversation with the funder, where they said, it would really be helpful if we could schedule in this way. And it's something that hadn't been a part of the meeting, a question that we had never asked. So I would just really encourage my development peers, especially, to be intentional listeners in these conversations. Don't presume that we already know the answers, because a lot of times it's those brief little anecdotals or quick moments that can really redefine how you deepen that partnership.
Yeah, very nice example. And it transitions us really to the next bullet, having those one-on-one interviews, which are really just conversations. In marketing, we call them one-on-one interviews, but here they're conversations. And don't forget, they are mutually beneficial. You are connecting to learn about their priorities and corporate engagement. Your relationship could potentially fulfill some of those, and that's what you want to learn about. And as Kristen said, invest your time during those conversations to be a really good listener. Think about new relationships, long-term relationships that you already have, the former and the target, and trying to have these conversations across the board. And create ongoing processes. Again, I did the same thing. Sorry. And create ongoing processes for collecting and refreshing those insights. It's definitely not one and done. And sometimes in marketing, we talk about bringing together when you need insights for focus, to bringing together folks for focus groups. I don't think it works here because things are so tailored and customized to the needs of one particular corporation. Okay, so these insights are really fundamental to everything that follows in this presentation. They make it possible for us to improve the impact of our outreach through segmentation, through the language we use, and the rest. Creating segments. So segmentation means to categorize or group together people that are alike in ways that are meaningful, in ways that you can act upon to meet your goals. In the case of corporate engagement, we're still dealing with people, but these groupings are really based more so on corporate characteristics like size, preference, goals. So for example, if you have the goal of starting 3 new corporate relationships by engaging 3 volunteer teams, you could do 1 campaign. You send all the same email to all of your target corporate contacts with the same language, talking about your volunteer need, encouraging them to come on board as volunteers. If you have the opportunity to make a pitch or speak at an event, bringing that same presentation every time, but hopefully as you're pulling your insights together, you discovered that corporations have different motivators. They have different policies, different directives, different areas of focus, and different characteristics that make taking the time to treat them differently valuable. So for a very simple example, you may discover segments like larger, more traditional corporations, they're only interested in days of service and they really care about their reputation. That's their main motivator. And then on the other extreme, there are smaller startup companies. They're seeking ongoing service opportunities for their staff because what they care about most is delivering very meaningful experiences. They know that that drives employee retention. So this is a very simplified example, but these are technically good segments because they're distinct, they're definable. You can understand how they're different. You can set different goals for them. You can reach them differently. Oh, sorry, that's actionable. You can reach them differently and you can actually motivate them. So one of the things you might want to do differently for each of your segments is think about the stewardship for your segments. And we got into this at the beginning when we were talking about types of stewardship, but this is really about fine tuning that engagement experience. So if you hear that so here are some volunteer related ones. You hear that your time commitment maybe is too heavy. Can you think about ways to be flexible? So at Apparo, we introduced some new days of service type opportunities and some lighter intro ways to volunteer with us. Maybe you're always just having individuals come in. Are there ways that you could recruit teams? And then the second piece of this is around making them feel great in the way that they want to feel great, to feel honored and know that they're integral to your impact. So, for example, we use that simple example with the larger companies that really care about their branding. There are a lot of affordable, very affordable options for building their brand. Here's an example from our website. We have a page where we have the logos of our corporate partners. These are folks, it may have been one volunteer and it may be thousands of dollars of funding. But logo on website's a very easy one. What are you doing on social media to thank them, to tag them? You can send out media alerts. So if they are doing a day of service or other in-person impact work, invite the media to come. When it's over, send out a press release. You can do that for a day of service, for major underwriting, whatever is appropriate. Invite them to come speak to at your events. The benefit of these retention or stewardship activities is while you're out there giving all that love to anyone you already have a contact with, other people see this and it can help also attract new relationships. And it's just important to honor them in the way that they want to be honored. So like we said, maybe that smaller company who really just cares about how good their employees feel, they may not care about their logo, but this little photo is from our volunteer appreciation event. They may love that you have a volunteer appreciation event and that you invite their staff to it and they can have fun and feel honored. So those are just some examples, but as Kristen talked about, listening and delivering that love in the way that they want it and that you can afford to do it.
I would add another value here, Bleema, is not only are we expressing our deep appreciation for our partners and fulfilling some expectations that they may have as far as logo placement, branding, things like that, but this is an incredible opportunity to also inform about the impact. So that's storytelling, where you're taking and showing them because of your gift, because of your partnership, this is what we were able to do. And many times when you're doing this in some of the examples that you listed, you're able to do that with a stakeholder, someone who has benefited from the service. You're able to do that in a way where you're creating, again, that personal thread, that connection to the mission.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for adding that. We'll talk a little bit about storytelling, like having templates in the goods section, but it's perfectly appropriate here. Thank you for bringing it up. So another thing you can do when you think about your different segments is think about, or in general, is also just plan a channel strategy. Where in the world will you be to reach the corporate partners that you're looking to reach? But first, there are steps that you can take to set yourself up for success. having an audience and having content is really critical. So how do you grow a corporate audience? Engaging on social media and tagging as much as appropriate and as possible is definitely one of our strategies that helps us grow our corporate audience on LinkedIn. We also, in the little picture here, is we take turns as a staff to invite contacts to follow us on LinkedIn. You have to be an admin, but it's very easy. And if anyone needs help with that, let me know. Encourage advocacy from your board and your key volunteers. Don't assume don't assume anything. Sometimes we assume that, oh, they love us. Of course they're talking to people about us. Not necessarily. And advocacy can mean engaging on social media. Sometimes at a board meeting, we'll literally put up a QR code to a LinkedIn post and ask folks to share it just so they see how easy it is and how it drives increased engagement. So you can ask them to do that. You can ask them, can you open a door to a corporate speaking opportunity for us so that or a meeting for us? If you really trust them, you can, depending on who they are, you can also make them an admin on your LinkedIn and let them invite their contacts. Collecting email addresses. So I am the Apparo email police, and I want an email address from anyone has ever talked to, because growing that email list just gives you another opportunity to share the impact stories, to share volunteer opportunities, just to build that connection with your organization, to make a new potential partner think, you know what? I want that love. I want to be involved in this. I want to make this happen. So this is an example of a little form. Every form, and sometimes it's just paper, like at an event, sign up here. If there's no way to do it electronically, that's okay too. Make it mandatory wherever you can. So that's about growing your audience and then creating content for that audience. So hopefully you have the volunteers, you have even the key decision gatekeeper folks who've had a great experience with you already. They have wonderful things to say about you. Connect your marketing team to them or have those conversations yourself. Get stories, get quotes, get testimonials so you have it in your toolkit, as Kristen was talking about. And you can put that up on your website. It can be in a brochure. It can be in multiple places, but you need it. Take photos and videos of corporate engagement in action, whether it's happening in person or virtually. And then if it's appropriate for your nonprofit, gather praise from the constituents who they've supported, the end recipients of that support, of that program they underwrote, or that volunteer who changed their life. So having this foundation in place and continuously bolstering it will help you build your confidence as you plan your channel strategy. So unlike consumer marketing, where you're directing your efforts to people, like your end of the year fundraising campaign or spreading the word about a class, it's unlikely that you're going to be very explicit here, like, hey, corporation, come engage with us. But there is a lot you can do to make sure that these gatekeepers know you're out there and that you have fantastic opportunities for companies to engage with you. So that's what a lot of this is about. It's about bringing to life the ways that companies are already engaging with you, even if it's just one volunteer, so that others see it and get interested. And if you don't despair if you don't already have any corporate engagement, because there are still going to be strategies here you can do to build your reputation as a nonprofit that you want to partner with. So in digital, if you have stories of impact, it's sharing them in social media is wonderful. Share that story, share who was involved with it, and then you have a call to action, which is just a sentence that says, hey, learn more about how your company can do this. So let's say you don't have a company that's been involved in it yet. You can still share stories of impact and have a sentence that says, learn how your company can lift lives, do more work like this, etc., whatever, depending on what is appropriate. And a strategy like this works on social media. It can work in a paid article if you pay to place an article somewhere. It can work in your newsletter. With LinkedIn and with Facebook, think about groups. There are groups out there in both of those channels of people who are these decision makers. And if you can get there and get some language around your nonprofit in front of them, how great that would be. And think about if you have a great story and money to invest, and you've heard that people keep hearing about you on a certain channel, maybe that's a place for some paid dollars to boost attention to a particularly great impact story. Google Nonprofit Ad Grant is, I'm not saying it's easy. It is complicated to set up, and Apparo does have has educational content about that. But if you do have it set up, this is a great place for very targeted ads around or around volunteering with you, where you can tailor those ads. Once you have it set up, you are encouraged to have multiple ads. So you could have one about volunteering and talk about how volunteering with you leads to great brand building. And then you could have another one where volunteering with you drives employee retention, for example. And then email, if you have a newsletter, that's a great place to share stories of impact. In person, identifying the right events to attend is a really important part of marketing, getting in front of those target corporations. So we talked about this a little bit. Did you learn about certain professional organizations they belong to, events they attend? Would they welcome you to come and speak to their organization about volunteering potentially? So a lot of this is asking. And then I say also, fish in your own pond, use your own events as an opportunity to highlight these stories, encourage corporate engagement. You're in front of an audience, your audience. Maybe they're volunteering and you want to talk to them about what else they could be doing. What else, just define corporate engagement for them. They may not know. They may be funding, and you could deepen the relationship if they were also volunteering. And then people are one of my favorite channels to think about is media. So if we're doing something in person, can we attract the media? We talked about showing love to your corporate partners by inviting media to events. Invite them by creating media alerts, and then ask your key volunteers and your board members to advocate in their companies. So once you plan the channels you use, you can consider the language you want to use in them.
Bleema, I love that you shared these. I think these are all really critical and essential too in follow-up. So maybe you've had an initial outreach and you're looking for creative ways to keep that conversation moving along. And each of these channels, I think, plays a really critical role in kind of helping paint that picture. So as you're looking to bring people along the journey of engagement with your organization, these are great ways to think about that. And I also think the opportunity, they say that collaboration or connection births collaboration. And so if you can really highlight some of those connections in the community that you have, you might be pleasantly surprised by the people that engage and the way that they want to collaborate with you.
Yeah. I do like the hidden pleasant surprises, right? Sometimes we're nervous and all of a sudden you're like, that was easy. It's not always easy, but sometimes it's easier than you anticipate that it would be. And you were talking about some of these as follow-up. Definitely in marketing, we talk a lot about the need for a multi-channel approach and how many times people need to hear about you in how many different ways. So that's definitely a piece of this. You had a meeting and then they see you on LinkedIn, or they saw you on LinkedIn and then they see you at this event, and it builds on each other. Those are channels being synergistic with each other, where we say that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So let's talk about copywriting. So everyday channels like your website, like printed brochures, really need to have broad appeal. You're not necessarily going to have a page on your website that's very appealing to corporate partners who are really into this. So I would suggest that you think about how to have broad appeal and the things that have to have broad appeal. So perhaps it's bullet lists that hit on keywords that appeal to multiple audiences. You've listened, you've heard different language, reflect it all there. If you have done your work to gather testimonials, list them and have multiple testimonials. People's eyes are drawn and their brains are drawn to what they're interested in. They're not going to read everything anyway. And also weave heartstrings and metrics. Their heartstrings are going to appeal to some groups of folks, and metrics are going to appeal to some groups of folks. And having both there will draw the people who and by people, I mean the gatekeepers, these decision makers, will draw them to what attracts them. So always make sure you have a strong call to action. And by that, I mean, when you're asking someone to email someone for more information, that's it. That's the link. The link is to the email. It's not to 3 different places. If you want them to go to a certain page or fill out a certain form, just send a link there. Google Keyword Planner is a great free tool. It's designed by Google for folks who are doing Google Ads, but even if you're not doing Google Ads, you can use this tool for free. And it's a way, if all of a sudden you're hearing a lot of terms, you're like, I don't know, how do I choose? Social impact, lifting lives, social good. So there's so many different terms, and you don't want to try to use everything. This is a great way to see which ones people are actually searching as they're doing research. So I highly recommend it. We use it before we create website pages, before we write blog posts. We check in to look for the phrases that we want to use. So we want to feel authentic, not like keyword stuffers, but we do want to use language that we know people are searching for the purposes of search engine optimization. And you want to try to address your motivation by segment when it's feasible. So if you do have an opportunity to give a presentation to a specific audience, you want to reflect language that's going to appeal to them. If you are doing a flyer or a brochure for a specific event for the specific audience, you want to use language and those words that you've heard, So for example, the larger corporation that really cares about their brand, lift lives and elevate your brand. Whereas that smaller company, they really care about their employee satisfaction, do good and drive employee satisfaction. These are very simple examples, but hopefully you understand. So while you're working on fine-tuning your language and your benefits, you're going to be out in the world attracting corporate partners virtually and actually physically, and you need a toolkit to do that. So the goods or the stuff, these are the things that you need in your toolkit, and having them ready, investing the time to get them ready makes you look pulled together and also makes your life easier. You're not scrambling to create and recreate things. It gives you the time then. You have the baseline. I'm about to go to this presentation. I can just tweak this a tiny bit to tailor to them. I'm about to send this email. I can just tweak this a little bit. To tailor to what I know motivates them. So, and I'll be remiss not to point out that Apparo has a free website user experience assessment. So if you are looking for volunteers to assess your website to see if it's delivering well in terms of being attractive to potential corporate partners, please take advantage of that. So being sensitive to time, how am I doing, Yenting? Okay. I want to make sure I finish and give opportunity for questions. Good to.
Yeah, about 5 more
All right.
minutes.
Perfect. So, having the right website pages so that you can drive folks to them makes life easier than recreating a flyer. So and then we talked a little bit about having templates for email, for presentations. They don't have to be any kind of like a fancy template. It can be an email that you save in your sent. It can be a presentation, just a PowerPoint that you save and you save a copy. Storytelling templates. So that's one of the examples we have here. Kristen referred to this. We call these snapshots, but these are one-pagers that we create at the end of our volunteer projects, and they can be printed. And we create them in Canva and we embed them on our website. So every volunteer engagement has a story and has a one-pager that's embedded on our website. Signage is also really important. There's just a picture of having so that if you're going to events, you have the signs, you're ready with your tabletop items, whatever they may be. Candy tends to attract people. You can use simple picture frames with QR codes in them to drive folks to where you want them to be. Any other tools you like in your toolkit, Kristen, that I didn't talk about?
Just having a robust toolkit, knowing that they can have a standardized look to them, but then be customized and personalized to whom you're meeting with. I think that's important. The idea of a one-pager is something that Apparo uses quite often in our toolkit. It's a great way to expose the mission. It's a great way to call out specific volunteers. And so I think there's some value in that when you're talking with your corporate partners. A lot of times the CSR person may not know the specific name of the volunteer. But again, if you're personalizing it, if you're really creating that human element of the storytelling, there's value in that. And I think, again, just the opportunity to really showcase the engagement and to build that, help paint that picture. All of these are important.
Thank you. Thank you. And finally, the last detail I'll talk about is less fun, but it's also very important. You're investing time and you're investing money. You set goals. So think about, how are you measuring success? This is important, because you learn and you try something, you learn something, and you tweak it next time. So you want to define what success is, you want to measure it. Think about what metrics are relevant. If the example on the bottom is a UTM, I talked about this last time, it's an IRCN tracking module, but if you are doing multiple things in one channel, so maybe in the Charlotte Observer, you've decided you're going to do a digital ad and also an article. You want to make sure in Google Analytics that you know traffic that came from the ad versus the article. So a UTM is something you would want to use, and that's definitely something I can help with if anyone needs any help. But tracking your traffic from different channels via Google Analytics is just is a great way to know if some of your digital efforts are working. And then, when you're doing the physical world efforts, having those metrics in place so you know that your efforts were worth it and you're tracking them. And getting feedback from people who are touched by these efforts can help with marketing. It can help potentially fine-tuning your approach. So that was a lot, and I hope you try what you can. I know I covered 8 different things, but perhaps one of them resonated with you. And they don't have to necessarily be done in order. I do believe that these strategies will help build and strengthen your corporate relationships to help drive your mission forward. I even have a final slide. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, we do have a few questions coming through, so why don't we hit those?
Great.
Is there a sample toolkit we can peruse?
So I can help provide some of the sample materials that we use at Apparo, absolutely. And right, we can't interact with this conversation. I'd love to know more of what they want, but what I can do is I will share some things with Yantang so that she can have those, probably some type of a digital folder that you can look at. And then if you were hoping for more, please just follow back up.
Can you talk about what is a channel strategy and how does it work?
So when you're choosing the channels that you want to be in, that's really what a channel strategy is. So is choosing where you're going to invest your time and potentially your money to be. So channels are everything on this page. Primarily they're, the digital ones and the in-person ones are what you're going to be choosing. And it's about bandwidth, really. I have time to attend these events. I have money to buy tickets to them. I have time to be in these social media channels and create great content, or I have money to do something paid in them. I have a great email list, so I'm going to put time into that. But it's deciding what channels you're going to be in and you can get into the details of it, on what channels, on what dates, and then thinking about, about your whole nonprofit, because you're probably you have a lot of priorities across your nonprofit, right? This presentation was about corporate engagement, but these channels are shared across different priorities. So at Apparo, we keep a spreadsheet and we just pay attention to what we're doing and what channel to what audience, so that we are sure that we don't have conflicting priorities. But it is nice to have one, especially for email, to have one person for email and for social media, that someone is really looking out for that. Hopefully that answers your question, but if you want more detail, please do just reach out.
Right. Next question. We have a hard time getting people to sign up for our newsletter. We have a sign up form and a QR code. You referenced earlier to use language, sign up for our email list. Do you think changing the language may be better to join our newsletter?
So I think it actually, the language that I think is the best is around staying up to date on what you want them to stay up to date on. So, um, stay up to date on volunteer opportunities. Here, click here, or you don't need to use the word subscribe even. You can just, once they click through, they'll see what it is. So that's really the language that I like the most. I don't love sign up for my newsletter, sign up for my email list. I want to try to build some FOMO. What are they going to miss if they don't sign up? So this is a way to stay up to date. Hear about our next blank opportunity here. Want more impact stories like this? Here.
In some of your slides, you mentioned PR. So the question is, how can you increase PR efforts and press coverage? What are new ways to bring people into your mission?
So in terms of PR, what we do, we have a staff member who focuses part of her time on it, and it's part of her time. PR can get very, very expensive. So what she works on is building a list of press contacts. And, you can go publication by publication. Who are the reporters? And she has an email list. And when we have an event, she literally, it's nothing fancy. She sends an email to that list in a format, in a media alert format. And actually, when I talk about the toolkit, I can send a template for that too, for a media alert and for a press release. But it's really trying to be in touch and letting people know that there is a great story out there of something that is about to happen that they can come to, letting them know who they can interview when they're there, making them realize like this is going to look really cool to my viewership, and they're going to like our TV station or they're going to like our newspaper because we saw this impact in the community happening, or share a great story after it's happened. But it takes time. It takes time to build that list. Maybe someone will share their list with you. It takes time to build the list, and it takes time to send those emails.
Right. I think we hit all the questions coming through the Q&A. There was a question that came through registration, a little outside of what we're talking about, but perhaps you can answer it. It's, are there any certifications or courses that you would recommend doing to build a better marketing resume?
So LinkedIn definitely has some, and I would peruse through those depending on what your area of focus is, as does Google. Certainly around digital marketing, there are a lot of classes and certifications if that's an area of interest for you. So I would look at the ones that Google offers. If you can build up your skills to help folks with nonprofit ad grant, for example, assuming you want to stay in the nonprofit space, there is a lot of need there. And then certainly in digital marketing. So I would look at LinkedIn for a lot of those digital marketing certifications also.
What's the difference between a media alert and press release?
So a media alert is before something has happened, that you're letting the media know it's going to happen. You send it about a week ahead or a few days ahead of the event, and you are literally inviting them to come with their cameras, their microphones, their tape recorders to the event. Whereas a press release is after the event has happened, you're sharing the news. This is the thing that happened. Maybe here are some pictures, maybe here are some video clips. Please write a story about it, or hey, would you like to interview us to hear how great it was? And I will put in that link just some type of an exam, probably an Apparo example that you can use as a template.
I think we got all the questions.
Great.
Um, Yeah, I do want to mention, we had some great feedback around the webinar and you guys sharing your expertise. So I just wanted to share that. He wrote, wow, this is such fantastic info and is really giving me a deeper understanding of long-term cultivation of these relationships. So
Thank
yes,
you.
thank you guys. Thank you both so much for your time and sharing your great expertise and yeah, just what a great series. For everyone else, you guys know how to reach us if you do have follow-up questions. Happy to pass that along to Bleema and share that out again. But do expect a follow-up email from me. It'll include the link to the recording, the slide deck, as well as our information if you do want to reach out. That's it for today. Thank you all so much.
so
Until
much.
next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.